Bentrovate, bentrovati questa seconda mattina. I'm very happy and honored to have you here, Annette Kolmos. Professor Annette Kolmos is a professor in engineering and education and problem-based learning. She is a founding director for the UNESCO PBL Center in Aalborg University in Denmark. And she's a very prominent researcher in problem-based learning applied to many disciplines. She's a professor in engineering, so it's very interesting to see how also in STEM disciplines we can appreciate the application of these innovative methods. And the title of her speech will be Interdisciplinary Education and Generic Competencies. We have talked about generic competencies or transversal competencies or soft skills or whatever, but this is a topic that we have already talked about yesterday. And the idea of interdisciplinary education, the challenge of going beyond the, let's say, the threshold of our disciplines is quite interesting, and for us it's a cutting-edge topic. So I ask you to start your keynote, Annette.
Thank you
very much for your presence here.
Thank you very much. And does this work? Yeah. Okay, good. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for inviting me, and thank you for the very nice introduction. I have been asked to say something about generic competences and interdisciplinary learning. And I will not talk so much about PBL, problem-based, project-based learning. But this is actually my whole field and has been my research field for many, many, many years. So I'm old, so that gives a lot of years. On the slide here, you can see some of my latest publications. These are all online publications, and these are all available for free. So you can just go and click here. And the context for my research, it is engineering education. So I have to apologize to you, to many of you, that many of my examples are also coming from engineering education. But I hope that you can transform from engineering to social science, to humanities, to medical education, and so on. So I will start out with the generic competences. What are we actually talking about? And after that, I will let you discuss a little bit, and then we go on with some contexts, with disciplinary and interdisciplinary context or projects. And in the end, I will talk about combination of generic competences and the different contexts. So let's get started. But as I understand yesterday, you have already talked about what is actually these type of skills. Thank you. What is it, and what do we call it? And I have to say that this child is actually having a lot of different names. Generic, transferable, transversal, soft. With the soft, I get a little bit, why should this be soft? And then the subject and the discipline should be hard. Because the opposite of soft is hard. So why should that be? Actually, to learn to collaborate, to learn to communicate, that is a much harder, at least emotional process, than actually learning a discipline. But there are many other names for this child. So I think what we are talking about here, and what is important, it is actually, what is it then we're talking about? If we look at the literature within PBL and generic competences, we have made a literature review. And the literature review says that what we're talking about when we talk about PBL competences or generic competences, it is actually teamwork. It is teamwork or collaboration. It is communication. It's problem solving, project management, or decision making, you can say. It is also how to retrieve information. It's also self-directed learning, metacognition, critical thinking, planning time, creativity, self-regulation. So there are many types of competences that actually comes up and people are studying when they then say PBL competences as a broad category. I don't know if you have got my slides. I sent a PDF version. You're very welcome to get that from Michaela. I sent a PDF version some days ago. But in that, you can also see how this review is actually done. It's one of these very rigorous reviews where you are narrowing down to, I don't remember, I think it was 59 articles in the end. So how do we learn these generic competences? That is actually one of the key questions, at least for my university, and I think in general in the literature. I would say there are three components. It's practice and experience. So you cannot learn generic competences just by reading a book. You cannot learn to collaborate by reading a book. You need to go out and act and try out and reflect. And then I have put in also variation. I think it's very important for students actually to experience a kind of variation. So sometimes I collaborate in a team of 2, sometimes or 3 or 4. Sometimes I collaborate in teams of 10. So there are various size of students. And then when you have these variation of experiences, you also need to reflect and you need to compare. Otherwise, variation will just go into confusion. So you get confused about, oh, I have all these experiences, but how do I proceed? How do I actually learn? So reflection is leading to language and a type of articulation. So I have put in this, and you are faculty developers, most of you, and I'm pretty sure that you know Kolb's learning cycle. We are using that for actually how we are learning, how we are doing with our generic competences. So we have on this side, let me see, I don't know where to, here it is. On this side, the practice dimension, where the students are getting experience and they also have active experiments. And on this side, much more the theory. This is a dualism. This is a dialogue between practice and theory. Because if you are only here on the practice side, then you will end up in trial and error. And that doesn't give a language. Students need to have a language for how they are collaborating, how they're doing project management, how they're doing time scheduling, and so on. And this language actually comes from over here. So it's not enough just to have experiential learning, just to be on the practice side. You also need to have some theories. So if we look at a traditional curriculum, and a traditional curriculum here with traditional classes the first semester, and then we have some PBL and traditional classes the second semester, and the third semester, it looks a little bit different. None of the academic staff, now I point with my fingers, normally have an overview of the curriculum and the teaching and learning methodologies. They don't know if I'm doing something here. I didn't know there was something here. So the first part is actually to map out the curriculum and to map out which teaching and learning methodologies are the professors or the associate professors or the lecturers actually using. Because only by doing that, you can create a track, you can create a more structured reflection for the students. Oh, you learned something about project management down here in teams of 10. Now we are in teams of 6 or 5. Now, can you remember what you learned? So they have an extra reflection on that. This system, if you don't have a mapping of the system, there is this disadvantage. It's uncoordinated and it's not stable. Because I taught this class and I'm leaving, and one of you take over and you do something else. So, it could look like this, that sometimes that you have a more coordinated curriculum, actually, where you merge some courses, where you do some projects, but actually that you have a mapping and you have a strategy for how the students are learning the generic competences. At Aalborg University, we have a project organization. Our students are working on projects. We have courses, taught courses to support the project. I'll just tell you about how we are teaching the generic competences at my university. Collaboration is very important. The problem-based project work must be exemplary. That means that the students can choose and decide on their own problem, but it has to be exemplary to the overall learning outcomes. Otherwise, they are out of scope, and they do not get the credit in the curriculum. And in principle, students are responsible for their own learning achievements, in principle, because we need to be in dialogue. And if you look at our model, our educational model, it is so that 50% of the time, our students are working on projects. We have physical facilities to support this, and the other 50% of the students' time, they are attending courses. They are attending taught courses, and the more the disciplines, sub-disciplines that has to be taught. We have a semester approach. That means that we organize things according to one semester, and all these elements, actually, they have to be coordinated in one way or another. That's very different from how you are doing things, I guess, because you have a course strategy where academics are much more responsible for their own course. And this is where students, they can also go in and do electives, and that means that they get a very different, huge variation, actually, of a curriculum, of their learning. The rules in the system where I come from, it is that the integration of PBL is integrated as explicit learning outcomes. So students need to learn collaboration, need to learn project management, need to learn communication, and they are assessed for it. New staff will receive a systematic introduction, and all the students will get an introduction to PBL in all study programs. And that is very important, because the students are really, maybe they think they know how to do things, but if they only have this trial and error, then sometimes they fail. Fail, you can learn a lot from failing, that's not an issue, but they have to reflect in relation to theory in order really to progress. Otherwise, it will take ages for them to get through. The way we have integrated the PBL competences, the generic PBL competences in our curriculum, is that we said to all the study boards who have the responsibility for the curriculum and to formulate the learning outcomes, we said to them, now we have made some examples of problem-oriented competences, on interpersonal competences, and on structural competences, and on metacognitive competences. And we want you now to pick out some of this that is relevant for your discipline, for your program. So that took a while for them in order to discuss. So this was just something, so that means all our students are not going through all these competences. It was a tool for our academic staff actually to get it integrated into the curriculum. But they did that. And then we teach. We teach in PBL introduction in the first year, where our students are coming in. They come from high school. They are very much have an understanding as pupil. And they have to change to be a much more self-understanding as student. And after that, we also give some kind of workshops in order to let the students refresh their thinking, their reflection on how they collaborate. And in the end here, we also support, and now they go out into the profession. So what is it actually from the collaborative side in PBL they can use in the companies afterwards? So this is how we scaffold it, or scaffold might be too strong a word. This is how we facilitate it in the system. So we also have variation, and we want our students to really to reflect on these variations. Problems, what kind of problem? Sometimes it's narrow, sometimes it's broad. Relation to society. How do you speak when you get out to society? Team size. We need to learn to work both in small teams and in big teams. And that's a world difference in doing that. Handling conflicts. This is hard for all of us, still for me. Sharing knowledge, how do we do that? How do we teach each other? Project management systems. Is it agile system we are going to use as students, or is it more laissez-faire, shared leadership, or what should we do? Should we let the leadership rotate? Our students are not very keen on actually using the word leadership. Leadership is a function, and they need to learn how to distribute or how to take on that function. It's not necessarily a person. And meeting culture. So now, this is how we do it. How do you teach generic competences? And what experiences do you have with teaching these competences? And I have actually said, okay, you should now pair up with what you do not know. Maybe you all know each other. Then just pair up with your neighbor, or with sitting one in the front and the back. And then just share knowledge. And after that, I'll go on with the disciplinary and interdisciplinary context. Okay? Good. Talk.
Annette vi sta richiamando.
Okay, thank you very much. He was doing something. I was afraid my slides were lost, but it wasn't. Okay, good. I will not take questions now. I take questions afterwards. I think we should just go on now to the disciplinary and interdisciplinary context, because this is where it becomes really, really, really difficult, I have to say. Disciplines, it's easy to learn to collaborate within a discipline. To learn to collaborate across disciplines, my God, there you have something, you are dealing with challenges, especially among academic staff. I'm pretty sure you're much better in Italy than we are in Denmark, but in Denmark it's an issue and it's a challenge. So the pictures I have put into my slides are all pictures from Aalborg University, and these pictures actually illustrate this one, a huge building where we have space for our students to work, like open space. So it's just to give also a little bit of a visual. So, but disciplinary and interdisciplinary context, what I'm talking about is when we have a discipline, well, it's one line. When we have integration of disciplines, you see here what we call narrow interdisciplinarity. It is when sociology works together with social workers or something like that within the same faculty, that you are actually working with other disciplines that are very much alike your own. In engineering, it's biology and chemistry and biotechnology and maybe medicine. It's all in one area, and they share language. And it's much easier when you share language actually to collaborate. But then we also have this one. And this one, they say in Brussels that we need to go to the mission-driven university, and we need to do sustainability, and we need to solve all the issues that my generation and my parents' generation have created for the world. And that means that we also need to work across STEM, science, technology, engineering, mathematics, and SSH, social science and humanities. Because you do not solve these problems only by doing a new technical device. It's also a social organization and social societal responsibility. So what we did then was actually to go in and look at Aalborg University, what kind of projects do we have in relation to this? So we have the discipline, the narrow interdisciplinary and the broad interdisciplinary. And then we also realized that we actually had also another dimension, because sometimes our students are just working in one team of 6, 8 students, but sometimes we also have several teams working together on one issue. So that means that it gave a beautiful, I like when things are in harmony. So it gives a beautiful 6 boxes here, or 6 categorizations of projects. The name of the project, it doesn't matter. It's the function that actually matters here. What we also developed, it was more to see that we have very different collaboration patterns. Because when you are collaborating here, you are attending the same courses, taught courses. You are having the same language. When you are down here, you have suddenly different languages from biology and from biotechnology, and you need to coordinate it. Down here with social science, oh my God, here it's becoming difficult. Because if you go to philosophy, they will start by discussing, is this a problem at all? Is this something that we should actually think about? And they will start trying to define the problem, and it will take ages for them because the thinking should be right. For engineers, they say, okay, here we have a problem, let's analyze it, and we go now for possible solutions. So they jump into the solution sphere immediately. Sometimes we also need to drag them backwards, but they jump into, they want to do things. They want to get solutions. This is what satisfies them. So the level of satisfaction, the level of knowledge, how we collaborate, how we are thinking, it's very, very different. And we realize that here, when we are here. I don't have solutions. I have a lot of challenges, and we need to find the solutions together. I'll just run through these different projects to see what is it. The discipline project, this is engineering, I'm so sorry. But you see, it's a crane, it's to avoid sway. When you have a crane with containers on the harbor, and you have a huge harbor down here. So you need regulation to reduce the sway of the crane. It can be solar cells, it can be everything. There are plenty of these discipline projects. And within engineering, I would say, I dare not to say how it is in Italy. I know not so much about the Italian educational practice. I still need to learn. But at least in the northern part of Europe, it is so that these projects, every university has projects. That's not an issue. That has been implemented all over. We also have what we call the inter-team projects. This is in one semester when several teams are actually working together. We had at computer science, they are working on an app for autism, for kids with autism. And they develop this app together, and they share the work in different ways. It's normally 6, 8 teams, small teams working together. It could also be in humanities, in language studies, where you actually have a special period that you have teams working with different authors together, and together actually create what is the common understanding of this period. So that's just another example of how this could be handled. Then we have the domain project. This is typically an elective at many universities. It's also called something else. I don't know but it's studios, design courses, capstone courses, or other courses using projects. There are a lot of these courses around. The book I showed in the front page, it's written together with a professor from Harvard University. And they have a lot of design courses where they have that at US universities. But they have a lot of design courses where they get students in from with different backgrounds and actually let them work together. At MIT, they also had a track. Chalmers University has something. NTNU, it's in Trondheim, UCL London, Twente, Iron Range in US, UTS in Sydney. So the list is much longer. And I'm pretty sure that at some of your universities, you also have this. I would love to add some names from, it's just my lack of knowledge. So the system project, this is what engineers really want to do. And this is where they are developing technological solutions. And it's disciplinary project teams working together. Engineering is one of the most collaborative disciplines at all. Nothing that you look at in this room or in this new technology is done by one. It's all done by teams and teams of teams and across global different countries and so on. So it's a very collaborative environment. And here it's just some of the examples of what our students are doing, but they also need to learn to understand what is a system. In social science, there are also systems. If you go to law, how does that actually interact with the rest of society? How does it interact with I don't know, some social problems? So you have to see it in a broader context. It's not system in the same way we can use systems as in engineering, but it's there. Then we come to the really difficult part. We have these mixed microprojects going on. And these mixed microprojects normally it's for a shorter period where we put students together and they actually work on that for a period, and then they don't really come out with anything real device. They just work together and learn to work together. So we have several of these, I would more call them events, where they actually come together for one day or for 1 week and do across the disciplines. And then we have these M projects. I could tell you a terrible story about how Aalborg University actually tried to move from the discipline project and down here without having any steps in between. And I would say we failed. And we failed because we didn't think enough. We didn't plan enough. But I will tell you about that later. We still have these M projects. It's more huge projects with social science, humanities. It can be, they have less integration, but it can be waste hold, how to handle waste in private households. And architecture can say something about the boxes and how these looks. Biotechnology says something about what do we do with the bio waste. Sustainable design says something about the logistics. And psychology says something about actually the interactive design. How do we do that so people understand? When we have to sort waste, it's one of the most complicated things, actually. What about soft plastic? What about hard plastic? What can we put into this bio-waste? Can we put meat into? Where do I learn about this? Where do I find the information? So, are you practicing any of these products? Please talk with each other again. Yes? Yes? Wow, thank you very much. I'll just use 5 minutes more, then we open for questions, okay? I want to say something about the combination of interdisciplinary learning and generic competences. Because what we did at Aalborg University is that we teach the generic competences in relation to the discipline project. And we thought that, okay, the students, they can easily bring these generic competences to any other context. They cannot. They can transfer from a disciplinary context to another disciplinary context because they are similar. But they can also do it more or less together with students, other students, where they are actually doing more or less the same discipline: biotechnology, biology, chemistry. If anything, anybody from chemistry, you would argue that that's not the same at all, but it's similar. But they cannot do this. They cannot use the generic competences down here, because here they need a transformation process. And a transformation process needs somehow to be facilitated. This is a problem in our system. At NTNU in Trondheim in Norway, they teach the generic competences at this level, but it's a very expensive system. So, but just be aware that generic competences, they are generic and contextual. And the learning of them, it's not always that you can transfer, but you need to transform. Transform means that you need to understand a new context. And you need to analyze, you need to be open, you need to have humility to other disciplines. And I have to say about my own engineering students, they are not very positive to students from philosophy. But philosophy students are not very positive towards engineering students. They think they're too narrow-minded. So we have something to work on, the attitude. Okay, what is also important when we integrate interdisciplinarity into the discipline is that up here we teach generic competences as a means to reach disciplinary outcomes. And that's fine for colleagues. That's okay. Then we are more efficient. But down here, we use the discipline as a means to reach generic outcomes, because they cannot do an integrated project in the same way as they can do up here. So we have the domain specific and we have the generic down here. And that is very important in the formal curriculum when you put it in. I just want to use then 2 minutes on the voices from early career engineers and companies. Because our engineers, they are still getting a lot of surprises when they graduate and when they get out into work. And it's the work argument. It's from the company results from these studies that you can use to convince colleagues and academic staff actually to change. Or that's one way of doing it. The surprises they have here, it is that they use so much generic competences. Oh, it's all about communication and collaboration. Oh my God. Where is my discipline? They ask. They work in parallel projects. That means that if you go to Siemens or you go to any of these innovation companies, you will see that staff, they are working at several projects at one time. So suddenly they have to handle parallel processes, and they're surprised. They are surprised that they are so dependent on their colleagues, because from education they were not so dependent on their colleagues. And they are surprised that they have multiple roles. Me as an engineer suddenly have to figure out how to buy things here. So I also need to buy things. So that is really something that they are surprised about, that suddenly they have to be practical sometimes. And I think it's no matter which subject, which discipline we are talking about, then it will be the same. They will be surprised when they get into work. The interdisciplinarity and generic competences, they are also surprised. They are surprised that the personal qualities actually play such a role for them. Personal qualities is not what we really can teach in education. But if it is empathy, I will develop my empathy, also created by the experiences and the context that I come from. So it will develop also in education. Otherwise, it is decision making and it's collaboration and communication. This is what they say. And we are about publishing this next article here. It is submitted, but not reviewed yet. So, thank you, and hope for the future. Yesterday, we went to the Contemporary Art Museum here in Geneva, and they had a professor. I don't know if he's from your university, but together with his students, he had made a lot of different drawings on how it is to be in IKEA. And my husband and I, we were laughing because we have IKEA too. And we are also sitting with these terrible guidelines and don't understand anything about what is actually going to do. And when I saw this, I thought, oh, in my experiences, sometimes it is really like staff development or faculty development that you don't know how to move on. So we need to avoid this, and we need to stop up here and help each other actually so we overcome and don't get here. So I would say thank you very much. This is my presentation today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Annette, because also for sharing your papers and your slides and your ideas. There's some couple of minutes for questions or comments about the keynote speech. So for sure, I was expecting you.
Okay. Sono Antonella Lotti. I would like to thank you, Annette Kormos. I met her several years ago. I went to visit her 3 times in my life in Aalborg University. I went there because I was interested in problem-based learning. And what I can say is to invite you to go to Aalborg University, where she founded the UNESCO Chair on Problem-Based Learning. They have visitors workshop twice a year, and they are very, very impressive, very, very effective. And I went there because I was interested in problem-based learning in engineer education, but then I discovered that this project, this model could be applied also in our universities, because it's I think she gave us the idea that it's possible to introduce this problem-based, project-oriented model, also keeping disciplines with the traditional lecture class. So as you have seen, in the same semester, you can have disciplines and then taught in the traditional way, and then the integration of this project. And then I heard from her, and there were also ideas, hints about the possibility to introduce in social sciences, as you said before. And now I was really very impressed. I thank you because you were very, very clear to explain your research about generic competencies. And I think it will help us to reflect and to do research in this field. So thank you very much for coming. Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there other questions or comments? No? Okay. I'm pretty sure someone will write you emails later after reading your papers. Non penso che sia collegato il professor Uricchio, per cui io direi facciamo la pausa caffè e non insistiamo, non stalkerizziamolo troppo e direi che possiamo procedere con la pausa caffè. Ah, c'è una domanda? Ah, chiedo scusa, c'è una domanda? Prego.
Tell us something about how do you assess the generic skills?
Yes. It's not a simple question. We actually do it by reflection. And the students, they need to hand in, during the first year, they need to hand in an individual report as well as a team report. And the team report is very much about how they have handled conflicts, how they made decisions, how they have structured the project, how they used the supervisors, the teachers, and so on, and what kind of challenges they actually met. The individual report goes much more on how they feel that they have developed their competences within this area, what at the individual level it actually is difficult, and what they feel they have achieved. So this is, it is by reflection. We have not done any matrix for this, but I think we have more or less a matrix in our backhead, that it is when they start to say advantages and disadvantages, when they start to reflect, when they start to go into variations, then it's a higher level than they just say, I did this, and that's it. So they don't really realize what kind of possibilities they have. So, thank you. Thank you.